Hello, I am Allison Gordon Wright. I am one of the immigration attorneys here at Villafranca Law. And today I want to talk to you about preparing for your citizenship exam and interview with USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So let's get started. When you are scheduled for your interview with USCIS for your naturalization or your citizenship interview and exam, you probably have a lot of questions about what to expect, right? What mean? There's lots of rumors out there about the exam. I have represented many clients during the interview, during this exact process. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about what you can expect so that you walk into an environment that might be nerve-wracking, right? And feel confident and prepared. So when you have your citizenship exam, it's really important that you bring all of the documents listed on the notice given to you by USCIS, right? When you get that interview notice with the date, you'll see documents listed about what to bring. Make sure you bring those, right? And when you get there with those documents in hand, you'll meet with an immigration officer, right? This is someone who works for USCIS. And usually each office, so depending on where you are in the United States, each office does things a little bit differently, right? But usually you'll get started with the exam. So you'll first you'll swear in. You'll promise that you're gonna, be truthful during the duration of your interview. And usually you'll get started with that civics exam. So as of now, which is early 2025 when this video is being recorded, there are 100 questions. I say as of now because there are changes, right, in immigration laws, policies, things like that. So we want, make sure you get the most up-to-date information. But as of now, early 2025, you can expect 100 questions, potential questions for the civics exam. So you can go to USCIS website, download those questions, and study them, right? Don't assume that you just will already know them. Some of them you might. You might already know a lot of them, but you'll want to study because, again, you might be nervous on the day of the interview and you want to feel confident walking into that interview. So during the interview, there's 100 possible civics questions. And again, you can get those questions ahead of time, study them, memorize those answers, because you'll be asked 10 questions and you have to get 6 questions right in order to actually pass the civics portion of the exam. So if you don't pass, if you freeze up, you can be given another opportunity to come back and try again to retake that civics exam. But we want to get it right on the first time, so make sure you study. If you don't understand the question or if you didn't hear it, if the officer maybe was speaking really quickly, you're always, you have the option, right, to say, "I'm so sorry, officer. Can you repeat the question? Do you mind repeating that for me?" And that is perfectly acceptable, right? And take deep breaths, listen to the question being asked, think through the material you've studied, and give your answer. There's also an English portion of the exam. Sometimes people forget about that, right? So you'll need to be able to read and write in English. The officer will give you sentences to read and write. For example, they might say, "Can you write this sentence? We celebrate Independence Day on the 4th of July." So you'll want to be prepared to write that sentence and to show that you are able to read and write in English. I say that there are some exceptions. If you've been in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for a really long time and are over a certain age, you might qualify for the English exemption. So if that's you, this English portion of the exam will not apply. But for most people, you'll need to also show that you can read and write in English. So make sure you feel confident about that going into the exam as well as the civics. Relatedly, the officer is also going to be analyzing your English comprehension throughout the interview. So it's reading, writing, and then comprehension, right? How and you're speaking. Are you understanding the questions the officer is asking you, and are you able to respond to them in English? So make sure that you feel confident in your English. There's resources if that's something that you're interested in. There are look into your wherever you are in the country local English classes to make sure that you feel good about that going into your um, interview. Then the final part is the the interview itself. So what does that mean? You're being interviewed at by an immigration officer. Well, um, this might not be your first time, right? If you're applying for citizenship, you have your green card, you're a lawful permanent resident. You may have been in this setting before with an immigration officer when you got your green card. So you might be familiar with it, depending on how you got your green card. Maybe not. This could be the first time. Um, and really, it's important to think about what is that officer's job, right? Why are they there? And they want to know that you, number one, are who you say you are, and number two, that you are eligible for citizenship. And that is not just based on if the officer likes you or not. There are legal requirements laid out in immigration laws about who is eligible for citizenship. And so they are going to be asking you questions that are the same questions on the N-400. So that's the form, that the naturalization application form that was filed with USCIS. They're going to ask you the questions on that form. So I tell my clients, don't feel like you have to memorize the form, but be familiar with it, right? Know what you've said, what information that you've put on the application. Make sure, of course, that it's truthful. And that you're able to talk about it, right? Answering the questions about your employment history, your family. It's possible you might be asked questions about how you got your green card, your lawful permanent resident status in the United States. So you should know the answer to that question, be able to say, oh, well, I was married to a US citizen or through my employer or, whatever the case might be, however you obtained that residency, you should know and be able to answer that. And then when I say confirming you're eligible, and I mention there's statutory, requirements for eligibility, you'll want to make sure, of course, that's what we immigration attorneys are here for, to confirm that you are in fact eligible. Some things that might make you ineligible for citizenship, right? Criminal history. If you have criminal history, particularly in the last 5 years, but even outside of the last 5 years, potentially, that might make you ineligible for US citizenship. So if criminal history is something that applies to you, you'll definitely want to consult with an immigration attorney to make sure you are in fact eligible, because you'll be asked about, any former arrests, citations, detentions. I mean, you'll want to be able to produce those documents, and the officer is going to confirm that whatever criminal history you have does not make you ineligible for citizenship. Um, Another thing that often gets overlooked is long trips outside the United States, or a lot of time spent outside the United States. Either of those, right, might make you ineligible for citizenship. If you spent the last year abroad and not living in the United States, definitely consult with an immigration attorney before you apply for naturalization or for citizenship, because the worst thing that we've seen happen is somebody goes in, they think, oh, like, I want to become a citizen. I've had my green card for 5 years. And didn't realize that, oh, wait, they were actually outside the country for too long. So now not only is their citizenship case denied because they didn't meet a requirement related to how many days they had to be inside the United States in the last 5 years, but also the officer thinks they abandoned their green card by living abroad for a year, and so they lose their green card. And so now not only is their citizenship application denied, but their green card status, their lawful permanent residency status is lost as well. Again, that's a worst case scenario. I don't want to scare you, but I do say there are eligibility requirements the officer's going to be looking at. There's a reason they're asking you all of these yes or no questions about your immigration history, your criminal history, things that, have you ever, right? That's what the form sounds like. It's really, really important that you answer honestly. If you're looking through an M400 and you see like, oh, yes, I need to answer yes to that question, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be ineligible, but you'll definitely want to consult with an immigration attorney to make sure you feel confident and understand your eligibility before you show up for that interview, right? Ideally, before you submit the application. But again, in preparing for the interview, just make sure you feel confident about the information that you've submitted on the N400 and you feel like you can talk about it, answer those questions, present any documents that are asked of you. So we highlighted the civics exam, the English exam, and the interview itself. Again, it's possible your English is being evaluated throughout that interview, so be ready for that. And then at the end of the interview, you'll usually be given a decision. Either yay, your case was approved, so sorry, your case was denied, or potentially, the officer might say, I can't make a decision, but you'll be getting a decision soon. That happens often as well. And I should say, even when your case is approved, it's usually recommended for approval, and then you'll eventually receive your oath notice in the mail. So that is when you come back and you swear your oath of allegiance to the United States and officially become a U.S. citizen, get your naturalization certificate, all of that exciting good stuff. Hope this was helpful. I know it's a lot to think about and can be a nerve-wracking process, but there are things you can do to prepare, right? So that you're not showing up on the day of a citizenship interview, walking in blindly, not knowing what to expect, right? So you're welcome to reach out to us if you're interested in applying for U.S. citizenship. I mentioned I've done lots and lots of these cases, and we are here to help, right? That's what we do. So feel free to reach out. And if you have an upcoming citizenship interview, good luck. We wish you the very best.